You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Albert and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is our Day 3 coverage of Star Wars Celebration, where we're going to focus on the Star Wars publishing panel and kind of a recap of some of the High Republic stuff that was happened yesterday. So we're hearing the echo. There we go. I was wondering, I was like, is it just me or is it something else?
That was my fault. Sorry about that.
We're live. And that's kind of what happened. So... well, hey, you've introduced yourself. How are you doing today, Jesse?
I'm doing all right. How are you? It was a little bit of a disappointing early morning this morning for Celebration. We were hoping to get we got High Republic news yesterday and publishing panel was today. We were like, okay, great. We're going to get a lot of extra books. We're going to see what's all coming in between, what's outside of High Republic. And yeah, that silence is kind of what you got.
Yeah, well, I think it was also the anticipation that they were kind of hitting a lot of things at the High Republic panel yesterday about character reveals, story reveals, and thinking, oh, maybe they're just kind of waiting for that to happen. You know, at this panel, that didn't happen. So, but speaking of publishing, Lauren, thanks for being with us again. Day 3, you're probably sick of us now, I would imagine. But how did you feel so far about the Lucasfilm publishing panel, and then just kind of Day 3 coverage in general?
Yeah, the publishing panel, I was expecting, or at least hoping for, some more announcements. There were a couple, like I know that we do have The Rise of the Red Blade coming out in a few months. So I was surprised that that wasn't talked about at all, or yeah, it was a little bit quiet on that front, but I guess it kind of helps make up for it that yesterday during the High Republic panel, I felt like they revealed more than I expected them to. So it's kind of like a balance, I guess.
Yeah.
Other than that, though, I mean, it's been a good interview day at Celebration, so I'm looking forward to talking more about that later on.
Yeah, and so just as a reminder, we will have another show later tonight, 7 p.m. Central, where we'll kind of recap everything that, not everything, but, you know, some of the highlights, some of the stuff that stood out for us as part of Day 3, similar to what we did with Day 1 and Day 2. But, okay, so to kind of bring us back, we're going to discuss, let's start with the publishing panel, because this was the first thing. If you're following on the live stream, then we've got an image up right now. So this was everything they announced. Now, in all fairness, right? I mean, the publishing panels is everything else besides the High Republic. I know it's probably at least in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, we're going to get big reveals here and that sort of thing, but they only have about an hour, and they've got to somehow talk about all of what we're seeing here. Although some of this has already been released, I get it, right? They're trying to show you here's everything that's come out in the last 12 months, rolling 12 months, or whatever it is. So there is a lot to discuss, and I know they don't want to take anything away from some of the other writers and some of the books. So again, it was a little bit disappointing, but at the same time, I guess in context, there was quite a few things that were announced.
Yeah, and I just kind of pulled this up. We'll probably do a little bit more High Republic here to start, just because we've got so much more there. But this just to give you the scope of the different types of content that are coming out this year. It's not just High Republic. It is nonfiction books like Michael Siglain was kind of referencing yesterday with encyclopedias, art books. We're also talking about young reader books, books for kids, you know, first reader level books. And so it's a huge scope in addition to comics. And we don't have Marvel is tomorrow, but in addition to, you know, Dark Horse comics and some of that. So there is a lot of content coming out. And sometimes it's kind of nice to see when they give you this big, you know, overview of just how much content we do get over the course of a year. And this isn't everything, right? I mean, this isn't everything that we've got some of this already in 2023, which is some of the items on there, like we see with the Jedi Survivor or prequel and all of that. But again, just a good reminder of like, we do get a lot of content. So pretty cool, but we'll get into some of the specifics here as well, but just kind of a good overview. Does this ever strike you, Lauren? Like when you see it like this, like how much we actually get over the course of 12 months?
It does look like quite a lot. I will say that when I'm looking at this, there are, I don't know, like I felt like it almost feels like when you look at the list arranged in different ways, it leaves different impressions on you.
Right.
Because looking at this, I'm seeing a lot more comics, and which is a good thing. But before I was like, oh, they're coming out with a lot of nonfiction over fiction. But now when I look at it this way, I'm like, maybe I was wrong to think that.
It's just, it's like where is it at, right? And which mediums you have it. And this is sometimes a complaint though, right? Because sometimes people are like, well, I have to go in too many places to understand the actual story. Is that starting to feel that way, Albert? Or is it really, does that bother you at all? Or is it, no, it's okay. It's a little bit of this and that for everybody.
Yeah. I think it's whatever, it's wherever you want to be. Like to your point, there's some comic stuff on here, but then I'm looking at it and going, wow, they got a lot of kids stuff on here too. And I don't keep up with all the kids stuff, even though I probably should for personal reasons. But you know, it just speaks to the market, right? Star Wars is this big and there's this much stuff going out. So yeah, I mean, I think it's, if you want to focus in on kids book, younger adult stuff, if you want more of the reference material, they pretty much have you covered. I mean, you were kind of joking about the cookbook stuff. I don't really get into those much. I buy the books, those kind of cookbooks as collector things. Like they look cool on a shelf, but am I really ever going to break that out and make anything? No, I'm never going to. I mean, this goes back to the Star Wars cookbook, which I think might have been the very first one ever released around early 2000s or so, right? Late 90s or something. But I bought all those, never cooked a single thing out of those, but they were just like bragging rights to have. And I'm not taking anything from the cookbooks. I know there are people out there that certainly are into Star Wars cooking. In fact, there was somebody just before we came on, someone was saying they needed to do a High Republic cookbook, which, by the way, in this panel, so one of the folks, German Jedi, they're like a Star Wars German podcast, mutual of mine, but he had mentioned that when they announced that or someone mentioned it in this panel, and they kind of wink, wink, nod, nod kind of thing that there would be a High Republic cookbook coming out. So, Lauren, all I'm saying is you're not going to get away from the cookbooks. They're doubling down on the cookbooks, and now they're invading the High Republic. So you got that to look forward to.
I would say, my response to that is that my bitterness about cookbooks probably has something to do with my cooking inabilities. So take what I'm saying with a grain of salt.
Well, of course, we've got Chef Chris with us, who's our resident expert in the culinary arts here.
Yeah, he's an actual chef with an actual restaurant. So,
and his Instagram is cool because he does post stuff that he's making is really neat. But yeah, the cookbooks are awesome, buddy. He says so. Yeah, point taken. And they are very well done though, and they're really beautiful to look at.
Chris,
who doesn't like pictures of food?
Yeah, exactly. Chef Chris actually should buy these books and like have a segment on our show, or he can do his own show. Happy to produce it, but where he like makes the food and then like rates it, like how good was this really in terms of like quality and taste.
This would be like Iron Chef. So you, me, and Lauren will be the judges. Yeah, and we'll just put Chris through his paces. Yeah, and he has to make things only from Star Wars cookbooks. Okay, this is a thing. Get this down. Can we get this started here? No, I'm running the pictures here. Okay, all right. All right, so maybe we'll get into kind of a good overview. Let's go into a little bit of High Republic, recap a little bit from what we had yesterday, maybe some of that. Again, we didn't really show this yesterday, but this is kind of what we think is probably more the teaser poster of Trials of the Jedi, which is coming this fall. This is the official start to Phase 3. Really love this art. And again, the context behind it was that this is going to start a year after Phase 1. Yeah. And the Jedi are being recalled back to Coruscant. We saw that at the end of Midnight Horizon. And basically, the Jedi have kind of lost the wilderness, if you will. And I'm not sure how I feel about that. I'm actually a little bit conflicted on that one. Well, and I think so. They did a pretty good job yesterday. I mean, I think this is to kind of recap what we talked a little bit about last night. I mean, and even Kevin Scott today, they had a very quick interview with him, DJO, and Alyssa Wong. And he reiterated the fact that, yes, we are going to go into a very dark period of time for the Jedi, but at the same time, right, the light is still there, and that there's still going to be things to look forward to, because we know they're going to come out of this okay, at least until Palpatine comes around, right, in Order 66. So I would agree, like, and even just this is ominous, right? Everybody's in shadow. I heard one person blurt out Ember, right? So this is almost confirmation that Ember lived, because I don't think we got a solid confirmation that he was still around at the end of what do you call it? Fallen Star, right? So cool there. There's been speculation that's Bell. I would imagine that's Bell. Right. There's no reason to think that wouldn't be. Maybe that's Buryaga there in the middle. Well, Ariana Christel really wanted that one to be. Yeah, Christina. She was trying to will it to happen. She was trying to manifest some things. Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, I think you're going to have, based on what we're seeing too. I mean, these banners, you're going to get the
Nihil kind of taking their victory lap, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, they really put their markers down on the galaxy, and there's a lot of stuff that was still left undone and unsaid. But yeah, I think it's I think Cavan Scott said it, and it's very cliche, but it's always darkest before dawn. But what's coming from you over there on that side, Lauren, when you kind of see this picture, and maybe even taking into context anything that you've been picking up on Phase 2, if that's relevant?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, Trials of the Jedi. I mean, this look, it's very ominous, as we've said, and it's tough for me to imagine how things could get worse at this point with the way that we left off on Phase 1. So that's concerning, but I am really looking forward. I'm happy to see Ember in the picture. I'm happy to know that we are going to get some of those characters back from Phase 1, because those Phase 1 characters, they have just stayed with me the most. So I've been anticipating their return. But with Phase 2, I feel like with Phase 2, we still have some puzzle pieces that we need to put together to know exactly how it's all going to connect. We can see some themes that I'm expecting to carry over, but I also don't want to say too much too, because since Cataclysm came out so recently, I don't want to say any Phase 2 spoilers.
Yeah, that's probably fair.
Yeah, but I still think we have some ground to cover for Phase 2 before we know exactly how it's all going to come together for Phase 3.
Right. I think the one takeaway though that I had was just talking about Phase 1 characters made me realize how much I've actually missed them and how invested we were in them. And now that they're back, we went through this period of withdrawal for a while with it. And now it's like, oh my gosh, now I'm being reminded of all of the amazing stories that we had in Phase 1 and just how much ground they covered and how steep we got into that mythology of Star Wars, the High Republic, creating something out of nothing. And now being able to come back and revisit it's just really, really exciting. So we'll pull up some of the actual novel slate here for all three levels, right? The mid-grade, the young adult, and the adult. Of course, everything kicks off with The Eye of Darkness from George Mann in November of this year. So this is where we're going to pick up. We're going to get that context. And I'm pretty excited that George Mann, his name is all over this stuff, just to talk about, the author here. But he was someone that he's been in Star Wars, of course, off and on a little bit. And all of a sudden just got thrown in the deep end with Phase 2. And I think his content has actually been some of my favorite throughout Phase 2.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think a lot of it too is, he keeps good company with Cavan Scott.
They seem like they're inseparable sometimes.
And I'm sure there's a lot of, I hate to say synergy, because we're using all the cheesy words tonight, but seems to be a lot of synergy between those two guys, right? They think very similar. They feed off of each other. And, for George Mann to come into the High Republic in particular, and to have somebody like Cavan Scott as his BFF from the beginning, getting the intel, throwing our own ideas back and forth. I mean, I think we're seeing that. I think that's why the quality of his books have kind of risen, in my opinion, to some of the other ones. And not taking anything away from him as a writer, Rick. He's already, like you said, he had already established himself in Star Wars lore and did a really good job, carrying those two books that he had prior to that. So,
any thoughts on your side, Lauren, that has changed? It's been about 24 hours. Things have absorbed a little bit more. Any other perspectives or changes in opinion, or where you're excited at for the slate of what's to come for High Republic Phase 3?
Yeah, I will say, so I went back and watched the High Republic panel from yesterday. I watched it again today to kind of see if there's anything I missed. And I got to say, after watching that panel again, I'm pretty much convinced that Buryaga is alive and that we're going to see him. The way they were talking about it, he's not dead. I'm sorry.
Right.
That's just a given for me now. I don't know why I didn't see it sooner, honestly. Other than that, though, I agree about what y'all were saying about being excited about George Mann having some more work in Phase 3. I really enjoyed Quest for the Hidden City in Phase 2, and that was one of his. So I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, there's just so much coming out of Phase 3 as well. Like when I think about this compared to Phase 2, I'm excited about how many new stories we're going to get. And sounds like we're going to have some continuations of the characters we love and also have some new ones introduced as well. So I think it's going to be great.
Yeah.
Let's talk about one of those new ones. Talk about Buryaga. Confirmed he's alive in the past.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Lots of kids' books with Buryaga, which is they're continuing on with that trend. He's always kind of been the face of the young adult, or I guess a preschool type stuff. So cool to see him. Is this the Rosemary Soul in Charles Soule one? Yes, it is.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, so Rosemary Soul is his daughter. So I don't know how old she is. I just know that they're in collaboration here. So maybe this is, if she's really young, that's even sweeter. But it'd be cool to see her kind of at a young budding age, teens, mid 20s, whatever, and getting kicked off in Star Wars lore and following in her father's footsteps here with a book like this.
Yeah, so again, a really young reader book for this one. There are previews out there. I didn't grab them because that's not as much of our audience, but there are out there. So if you have kids that are very much into High Republic or into Star Wars, man, they've been coming out with a lot of great young reader books and beginning reader books. So these are fantastic to have kind of in your collection if you have small children. Just a recap on some of the other ones we also had was Tales of Light and Life. This is all the short stories that we get, and this is becoming more of a common theme though to get compilations of short stories within this. We'll talk a little bit about Return of the Jedi here in a little bit too, but these shorter stories you get a more character focused, a little bit more specific moment in time type of thing. Do these books really appeal to y'all? Do you feel like you get more out of these, or do they feel like they're maybe not even fully canon? Like some people don't know how to interpret these from a canonical standpoint. I think they're firmly in canon, but they tend to be sometimes a little more lighthearted in nature, a little more specific, and maybe not as they don't progress the overall story of what we're getting. But do you guys like these? Do you guys like those little specific moments, Lauren?
Well, I think the thing about it is sometimes the shorter stories, it can feel like a piece of a story. And sometimes it's a good thing, and sometimes it's like you want more. So, personally, I tend to be more of a fan of longer form storytelling, but I still think that there's like a place for these types of short stories too. So, especially when we're getting to revisit characters that we might have wished didn't die, like like Loden Greatstorm.
Mm-hmm.
So, no complaints on that end. I think it'll be great to have more content with these characters and kind of spend some more time with them, but I do sometimes, if it's a character I really, really love, there's a chance that it might just make me wish for a longer story.
Yeah, and this is something for me, right? I would consider myself a completionist. I kind of have to have these stories. They're all the stories that you necessarily don't need to have, but they certainly fill in the gaps, and they can change your perspectives on some things. I think going back to what you'd mentioned, the controversy is the fact that they've got two sets of these stories. They've got the stuff in from a certain point of view.
It's hard to say that right.
Yeah, because we have our own show. It's similar. From a certain point of view, and I think that in itself left the door open for people to poke holes in it and go, well, this is really not canon. This is just somebody's viewpoint. No one's saying this canonically. I would say that's probably one set of books, and I think that's probably fair criticism with the title, especially the way it was egged on when the first book was released, and they've not done anything with the second, or even that I'm seeing now with the Return of the Jedi one, to kind of put a stop to that. So I think it could be left open for interpretation. You have a second set of those short stories, which is what we're seeing here with Tales of Light and Life. We had the Tales of Light and Dark. Those in my head,
the Star Wars Insider short stories as well.
Exactly, the stuff that we're getting out of the magazine. That is I don't think there's any dispute that those are truly canon stories, right? And they just happen to be smaller pieces, and they kind of supplement, fill in the blanks, if you will. But I get it. And it's not for everybody. Some people one of our former show host, Mike, right? He didn't like any of this stuff, right? He just wanted the nitty gritty. Give me the main novels, give me the main movies, and all the other stuff was just too much filler. Didn't have time for it, and that's fine. I get that, but it's the FOMO I think that I have by not having these stories. And let's not even talk about the Barnes & Noble exclusive, because I was still pissed off about that from last night.
I will say, I think that my view on the Barnes & Noble exclusive might have changed since last night.
Okay.
So I'll
walk me off the ledge here. Here we go.
Right, it's your turn, Lauren. You walk him off the ledge.
I'll give you all my theory. So when I watched the panel again and they were introducing Alyssa Wong, I think that when they brought them in to be a writer for the High Republic, I almost wonder if that other edition had already almost been finished and complete, and then they were like, well, we really want to have one of their stories, so let's have another edition where we could add one of their stories to it. That might be my theory right now.
Yeah,
subject to change later this afternoon.
Yeah, no, you and I are aligned. I think there were a couple of ways that this could go, and I think that was one of the paths that I kind of landed on too, of saying that maybe we had an opportunity and here's where it was, but here's the conditions that we had to be able to meet it to be able to get it onto the slate. Because I mean, otherwise you're kind of limited to, you know, these tend to be complete stories from that respect, but they're not short enough to be, you know, just tossed into Star Wars Insider. I'm not trying to shortchange those stories at all, but you know, some of that context as well. But I think this is something there's got to be something more there, of course.
Well, and I said if that was the case, then that seems noble, and I'd be okay with that. Like I'm 100% okay with that.
Do what you did there.
Yeah, noble. But Barnes and Noble.
Yeah.
But if it's not, and it is about, you know, I'm going to call it a money grab or a way for Barnes and Noble to stuff their pockets and take advantage, that doesn't feel good at all. Like that still makes me mad, and I'm still going to buy the books again because for the reasons I just talked about with the FOMO and like a completionist, like they're going to force me to buy it. I mean, I get it,
but you'll have a very stern look on your face as you.
I'm going to write them a check, like a old check.
You're going to count pennies at the counter.
Yep, pennies at the counter just to make them mad when I buy that book. Yep.
Oh man. So moving on to the next one. So Night of Sorrow, I really wish, like, so when the interview today with Cavan Scott and Daniel Jose Older and Alyssa Wong, they were on the Celebration live stage for interviews. They were asked about this. And I was like, finally, we're going to get a little more meat to whatever this is. And we got kind of a joke about it.
Yeah.
And we love
it was a night of sadness. Oh, it's a sorrowful night.
Might there be tears? Yeah. I mean, now granted, we love Cavan Scott, we love DJO, and we love Alyssa Wong. Alyssa Wong was a bit quiet during most of this, but that was really disappointing. Like I think this is one of the things with High Republic. They felt it was kind of okay just to give us titles of books and really, really super high level things. And I get these are over a course of really 2+ years for us right now. So I get that, but it would have been nice to have a little more context around what is coming with the beginning of Phase 3 as it pertains to the fall of this year, because that is going to be right around the corner. It's basically 6 months away. That's not really that long. So again, I was hoping it was a big disappointment for me because this is just amazing artwork. And so I just get amped up over amazing artwork in the first place. But
well, I'm wondering, so on that note, I wonder if this is similar to what we talked about with the Mandalorian panel, right? They because they're still mid storytelling with Mando, we kind of assume they probably wouldn't reveal much, if anything at all, about anything because they can't ruin it, right? I just wonder if Celebration had happened at the end of Phase 2, would they be more willing to share deets on stuff coming in Phase 3 or give you more context and background and stuff that we had just happened? And I just wonder if the reason why they're not spilling the beans on or giving us much on this is because there's still a bit of story to tell in Phase 2, and maybe they don't want to spoil that. Maybe they do want to keep that behind locked doors. I mean, they have been very secretive about all of this stuff. In fact, when you go back to that timeline, right? What was that marker? I forget the verbiage they used for that piece that showed up on the timeline. Do you guys remember, Lauren? Do you remember that? It showed like it was like to be determined or
to be announced. Yeah,
to be announced, I think is what it said. Yeah,
and they beat around the bush entirely. And Michael Siglain acted like he wanted to share, but then didn't. And it's all would be revealed. Yeah. Eventually.
Yeah. And so I don't know what that is. And my head got spinning on a couple different things. And the marker was before Phase 1. So is it a Phase 1 thing? Is it just a placeholder? Does it happen between Phase 1, Phase 2? I don't know. But all I'm saying is that, there's been a lot of secrecy around this stuff. And I do, on some levels, enjoy it because I, don't mind not being spoiled on some things. But at the same time, like to your point, I mean, come on, you're showing this artwork. What the heck's going on here? What are we going to be talking about, right? And we just didn't get a whole lot. So,
anything else there, Lauren? Or we'll do a quick overview of some of the High Republic things we got from Dark Horse as well.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that I feel like they have talked more about some details of High Republic than I expected them to. However, I also agree with you in that for High Republic, just because it's more details than they've said in the past, that's still not really saying much because they've still kept such a tight lid on it that I was surprised that they even said that that there was, I think they said that George Mann's book was going to have Marchion Ro, Avar Kriss, and Elzar Mann. I was surprised they even said that.
Yeah,
honestly. Right. So I'm happy that they gave us some stuff, but yeah, I mean, relative to other things, it's still not very much. Like even during that panel yesterday, they were still kind of like they kept cutting each other off. Like, don't say that, don't say that, don't say that. So,
do you mind bringing up the timeline again, real quick, or the number of books? Sorry, the books for Phase 3. Where is the Valiant Vow? No, it wasn't any of these. Sorry, I guess they were still talking about. It must have been they were talking about Path of Vengeance and Night of Sorrow still. In my notes from that panel or that interview, the only thing I had in here that didn't mention was that Kevin. This is where Kevin Scott had said that Night of Sorrow is going to be kind of like a low point for them.
Right.
But he said that they still have hope, and this is where they have light. This is where we made the comment about after the darkness comes light kind of thing. So it does again to the image that we saw with the Nameless and. Everything that mentioned right now, it does look like we're in for some pretty dark times, but I don't know. We'll see what the light is. I can only think it's going to be Avar Chris. Light of the Jedi. I don't know what you're talking about.
The only possibility.
It's the only possibility at this point for me. Yes, personally. Thank you.
I won't take that away from you today. How about that? All right, we'll stick on High Republic a little bit here. We will dive a bit more into Marvel and stuff tomorrow evening during kind of our last day or last piece of coverage of Celebration, but Dark Horse, I thought, did have a decent panel, at least as far as reveals. So we have Lula here, which for High Republic Adventures is a free comic book day stuff. So you can get this for free at your comic book day. This is usually in May, I believe. So always a fun adventure to take the kids out. They've usually got a bunch of different things. But I just love the High Republic Adventure art. And the Dark Horse comics with High Republic Adventures have actually been pretty solid. And they were really good back with IDW as well when DJO was running the show there. And so it's really cool to have him come back in this respect too. So again, not a whole lot of details on any of this type of stuff.
Wait, sorry. You're burying the lead on this one. Bottom left-hand corner. What is this Nickelodeon Avatar comic? Is that coming? The Last Airbender?
Well, I think there already is one, but they added more stories. So free comic book, they usually have a cover, but you've got 3, 4, 5 different stories within that. It's a sampler of sorts.
Yeah. Oh, I may have to pick that up.
These are always good, and sometimes these are kind of secret collector's items. So if you have someone in your family that likes to collect these things, usually you can go get them for free. And sometimes they're interesting because you might get a first appearance or something to that extent. This is what I'm super excited about. So this is a Quest of the Jedi, and so this is a one-shot comic, but it has Ty York in it. I believe this is actually already out, but I don't have this cover. But I want it.
Right. This cover is pretty slick. Yeah.
I just love Ty York. Of course, the magenta lightsaber, of course, and with this rain and the art that we've got here is just really super fantastic. It's kind of while this is set in phase 2, you're in phase 1, you're in the current THR, High Republic with Ty recalling stories that she's had, which I think is a really fun story element, especially from a character like Ty, where she has all this experience that we still don't really comprehend or have story or backstory on.
Yeah.
And so this is a character I really hope that we come back and revisit in phase 3 in more detail. Lauren, did you get to enjoy the what was it? What was it called?
Oh, that was not Escape from, or the Monster
from Temple Peak.
Temple Peak, yeah.
Did you get to read that series?
Which was that from earlier?
It was with IDW, yeah.
Okay.
It was the comic book, IDW. It was the Ty York central focus. You get to see her origin.
Okay. No, that one is still on my list to get to, so not quite yet.
Yeah, that was a good one. So highly recommend that one. But again, so more kind of one-shots from the High Republic Adventure space. This is, again, just more comics that they've got coming out here as well. And then they've got some spreads. So if you're into the comic book art, I love what the artists have been doing over here. And Harvey Talabau and Kevin Talabau have been just knocking it out of the park with covers and the inside art and things like that. So they have been with this series, I believe, since IDW, since phase 1 and throughout phase 2.
From the very beginning, yeah.
Yeah, so it's got that really consistent to it, but it's very saturated. It's like, to me, it feels like what you would think of traditional comic book art meets modern colorization and vibrance. And so it's just super appealing to be able to see Maz Kanata in her flowing cape.
Oh, no. Looking
like she's a level 20 World of Warcraft carrier with mixing match of armor and everything else, if that was still a thing, which is not, but just makes me so happy, and I just stare at Albert. See what
I'm avoiding eye contact right now.
Yeah,
when am I going to get this
Albert is
response?
in a silent rage. Yeah.
DJO was talking about, he did mention Maz about writing her right now and how she was kind of at the height.
He called her iconic.
Iconic. I heard that, and I'm like, really? I don't know about that, but I like that he did call her kind of the height of being a pirate queen, which I think is a cool angle. Like, I would like to see that explored a little bit more. So long as she's not making advances on anybody. I mean, that's really all I'm asking for.
Just keep it in your pants, Maz.
Exactly. But right. Keep your pants on, Maz, please.
But she is a cool character in general, kind of like a Hondo, right? She's a cool character because you just know there's so many stories behind how she built this empire, how is she so well connected? What are all the stories that what are all the lives that she's lived?
Who are all the people she slept with?
No, that wasn't part of what I was saying, but now that you said it, I guess I
There's
could
not time to cover that.
Thank you, Lauren, for confirming that.
I knew I liked her.
No shame, but there's just not time to cover
Yes,
it.
it's just right.
When you live that long,
Right.
you've
A
accumulated.
woman has needs. I get it. Yep.
That's
I
right.
totally get that.
But she does like at her core level, she's actually she's a pretty cool character with a lot of opportunity for cool backstory. My opinion is if you like Hondo, you kind of like Maz Kanata. Maybe a little less creepiness from Hondo, but maybe a little more morality on Maz.
Well, yeah, I'd say a little bit more morality is probably fair with compared to Hondo. That's for sure.
I'm glad we found a happy medium here. All right, another kind of cool thing from Kevin Scott, and he's been doing this. So around Halloween, he comes out with basically a series of comics, usually 4 issues with a few different variants on the covers. But anyway, to kind of give like a horror type of story. He's a huge horror fan.
Yeah,
huge horror fan. He loves writing horror. Some of his
reading,
other books,
watching.
Yeah,
he's got his kids into it.
Yeah, his kids are all into it too. That's movie night.
Yeah.
So he's coming back, and I was really curious where they were going to go with this because last year they had to deviate a little bit of what they had done. They had done a lot of Vader's Castle, the Ghosts of Vader's Castle, Tales from Vader.
Mustafar.
Yeah, so it was very focused there. But last year they went like Tales from the Rancor Pit.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, okay. What are we doing this year? And so this year it's Tales from the Death Star. And I think this is actually kind of a really cool idea. When you think about everything in the Death Star is usually pretty bright. It's pretty utilitarian. It's very Empire, right? What possible horror story could you have in there? And if you just take that blinders off from it, you're like, oh my gosh. Trash compactors are just the most obvious one, but just everything else that goes around in there. And I can think of 1,000 different things of what Palpatine is doing when he visits that are not kosher and are super Sith and super magical and super, Night Sister horror-ish type of thing, right?
Yeah.
And so I've actually got really excited about this one. I don't always get super excited about these types of books, but on this one, it spurred imagination. I was like, man, it's like Kevin's gotten his element in Star Wars. I'm like, yeah. I'm here for it.
I think this has the potential to make people upset, as all things Star Wars. But I think specifically, like there's always been this discussion about what is the Death Star like beyond what we've seen in the movies, like what's going on in the Death Star, and even going back to like Legends and going back to the Star Wars role playing game, it was always kind of inferred that what we saw on screen was obviously just a small fraction of it, right? We saw all the military stuff and that sort of. But they had like experimental labs going on down there. They had probably black ops, clandestine operations and projects and all that. I mean, it was a full floating city essentially, right? So I think, and I would like to see him kind of tap into that. I mean, we had like, how did the Dianaga get in there, right? There's theories about how it was part of an experiment that was happening. They were using them and they just pitched them into the trash and they lived there. So there was a lot more going on, I guess is what I'm saying, than just the bridges and people, standing around tractor beams or walking through pristine hallways. There's a darker side, no pun intended, to the Death Star. So I'm pretty happy about this. Like I like the fact that we're entrusting this aspect of the Death Star and that storytelling to somebody like Kevin Scott, because he has a precedence of doing really well with these kind of darker stories and still keeping true to the canon and what we think we know about Star Wars.
Are these stories that you are interested in at all, Lauren, or are these maybe not your speed, or how do you feel about those?
Yeah, I think it sounds cool, and that cover has me interested as well. So I think that it's going to be cool. And the Death Star is so huge that it's not hard for me to believe that, there's certain parts of the Death Star that might not be that utilitarian bright light feel. So to me, it makes complete sense that there's going to be some stuff going on that's a little bit more of like that horror feeling.
Yeah. I agree. I think this might be kind of cool. It might be pretty fun. All right, where do we want to go next? Oh, how about this? This is up my alley. Hyperspace Stories. So in the dark, so they have a series now called Hyperspace Stories. This continues the line that IDW had with, I believe they were called. Oh my gosh, now the thing's escaping me. I think they were just called Star Wars Adventures.
Adventures, yeah.
Yeah, so this continues that, and so they're just kind of localized stories with characters. Maybe they get a couple of issues, but we just get really random things. And so Quinlan Voss and Cad Bane on the same cover, like fighting. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, why not? Oh, we said that at the same time.
Yeah. No, I love this idea though. I mean, because again, these are really cool stories, and this is where you get into is it canon or not, and I don't care. I just don't care, because if they came across and fought each other, I could be like, okay, that makes sense. But the other side of it is like, no, like, why wouldn't they have come across each other? I mean, we know Cad Bane knew about the Jedi. He knew we didn't really care for him. And being able to see Quinlan Voss and all of his amazingness finally coming back onto the page, or please come on screen at some point. It'd be great for those things to start combining, but just to have him again on the page is pretty neat.
Especially knowing the type of Jedi that Quinlan Voss was. He kind of did things a little bit out of the box, and he didn't always follow the exact rules. So for me, I could totally see him crossing paths with Cad Bane while he's doing all that.
Yeah.
I totally want a Quinlan Voss Obi-Wan Kenobi buddy cop, like anything, because I think I love the dynamic of those characters, and what was it called? I always forget my favorite book, Dark Disciple. Goodness gracious. It's terrible. All right. Maybe we'll talk about a few of the other publishing panel type of books now that didn't get discussed that Laura brought up.
What happened
earlier.
to this book? Like, I don't understand this at all. I mean, you're a couple months away from release. I put the pre-order in, so I haven't got anything saying it was going to get canceled. I just find it really weird that on the cusp of releasing something like Jedi Survivor,
right.
We've got Inquisitors apparently showing up in the Ahsoka trailer. The Inquisitors in general are just probably at an all-time high, I would imagine, at least in the last 6-12 months. So you got this book from a well-known Star Wars author, Delilah Dawson, who's done some pretty good stuff in the past.
Done some really good stuff. Yeah.
Why the heck was this book not even talked about? Like, you would have thought they would have at least brought her out in the panel, had said a couple things, showed it, showcased it, tried to promote it, push it, and none of that happened. So I just find it really odd. Like, what is going on here?
Yeah, were you surprised by that, Lauren? I mean, this is a book that comes out, I believe, currently still slated on Amazon by around the end of July. So we are 3.5 months out.
Yeah, I was surprised that there was nothing mentioned about it. I wasn't expecting them to go in a ton of detail on it, but I thought they would have at least pushed it, like Albert said. So it did kind of make me worried. It had me asking myself, like, is this book still going to go forward? Because I know that, sometimes, like we've seen with comics, things will get pushed around quite a bit. So I don't know if that means that there could be a delay on this or what, but I mean, I'm hoping not, because it sounds really cool and I love the cover art. It has me interested and excited to read it. So, I mean, I guess we'll just have to see what happens with it.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, this is Albert's right. This is kind of at an all-time high for Inquisitors being on screen with Kenobi, maybe what we saw in the Ahsoka trailer as well. So there's a lot of curiosity. Tales of the Jedi was another one. We recently got a really great look at another Inquisitor. So why we're not doubling down on this book is a bit of a surprise. And maybe Delilah Dawson wasn't able to attend, and that's why it didn't get as much attention while it was there. But again, this is a little bit disappointing that even if it was mentioned, it was just more of a passing mention. There wasn't any additional details to be on and have Delilah Dawson talk about this book.
So this just in a couple hours ago, and I'm going to take this because I do trust the source. This is Laura Kelly over at Force Toast Pod, a friend of ours, I would say. She did say she attended the panel. She said, decided to take a break from live tweeting panels, but one cool thing that happened in the publishing panel was that maybe a hint/implication that Delilah Dawson's Rise of the Red Blade may have some kind of connection to the High Republic. So
that's an interesting development.
At least makes me feel a little bit better, because if there is, okay, then maybe they don't want to dig into it. I still weird that they wouldn't have at least just showed it and said, hey, don't forget, in a few months, get your pre-orders in, start, hyping this book up.
But the timing is still weird, right? Because phase 3 for High Republic isn't until, that's not until fall. So we're in phase 2. There's really no room for Inquisitors. We're kind of talking about them with Acolyte, so maybe there's a tie with Acolyte there. That'd be kind of cool. But Acolyte doesn't come in until 2024.
Yeah, we're still ways out on that.
So
there's something going on here. There's definitely some smoke. I'm sure we'll figure it out. Like a year from now, we'll come back and go, oh, okay, maybe it makes all sense, or yeah, that was even stupider now.
Yeah, because even if there is a High Republic tie-in, it doesn't explain why they wouldn't even mention it. Because with High Republic, they're very happy with just saying the titles of books and nothing else. So why wouldn't they do that for this?
Yep. Yep. Agreed.
Okay. All right. So before we get into non-storytelling type of fiction, we got a couple more here I want to talk about. So this one's actually a bit interesting to me. So this is E.K. Johnston. She's coming out with a young adult book called Crimson Climb. This is about Kira. And so this is about Kira as she's met Dryden Voss. He's pulling her out of the depths of Corellia, and she has to basically decide what she's going to do with her future. She's going to buy in and go all in with this criminal organization aspect of thing. You'll learn the skills, further her, skill developing and abilities, and maybe take over this thing in the at the top, or it's going to give us that background that we had. Is this a story you wanted from Solo, a Star Wars story, Lauren, or is this something that's kind of cool to have, but maybe not? Or where are you kind of feeling on that one?
I'm looking forward to it because I do like E.K. Johnston, and also for whatever reason, I mean, I'm sure I could pinpoint why, but the young adult novels have just been working for me a lot more in recent months. I think maybe it has to do with just like the types of themes that we often see in young adult. So really lately, any kind of young adult I tend to be excited about because they just seem to always be working for me. So I think it's going to be good, and I like Kira as a character as well.
What about you?
I mean, yeah, I don't know that I'll pick this up. Honestly, I'm not the biggest Kira fan, and that's nothing. I mean, I know people like her, and there's a lot of reasons to like her. There's a lot of content with her, which I'm pretty excited about.
There really is.
Even when you look back, I mean, we had Crimson Dawn, Crimson Reign, this Crimson Climb, or the other ones that we had.
Hidden Empire.
Yeah, I mean, we've had a lot of Kira content, which is cool, especially for those that really love Kira. I'm just wondering now too, like how much of this is. There was rumors back when Solo came out that she was going to get her own TV series. I've still seen people talk about this. She's still a very young actress, so there's a lot of potential there for her to kind of tap into it. A very complex story in terms of how, where she went after Solo and how she rose to power, her connections with Darth Maul. There's a lot of deep storytelling that I think exists there. I just wonder if she going to be relegated to a book and comic book character only, or will she ever make the jump to, live stream, be it television or, her own spinoff movie, or maybe pick this up in a Lando series or Solo 2
as the central character, you mean?
Maybe. I mean, I don't even know. I think there's probably more of a case now with all of the content for her to be a main character.
Yeah.
Like she has that kind of following. We've gotten enough from her at this point. If you'd had asked me that, 4 years ago, I would say probably not. But yeah, I think she's got everything she needs to.
Yeah, I think this is where, if I'm with you, a handful of years ago, I'd have been like, yeah, Kira's okay, but how interested am I? Maybe not as much. But then when you hear E.K. Johnston, who wrote Ahsoka, of course, which we absolutely loved, and I think this is an opportunity where the content that has come in the comic books has really helped this character with Crimson Reign and with the whole the Crimson Dawn reemerging, and then Hidden Empire has been a really great story as well. These are all in the Marvel comics, where this is a viable story now, and this is. I mean, the cover is a very similar aesthetic to what we've had with some of the Han Solo and Lando books as well. And maybe that's what's kind of hitting some of those notes for me too, both positively and negatively, I think, in some ways. But with the stories that we're getting in the comics, it really does bring this character into a new light for me, at a new interest level of the ruthlessness that she has, but she still has that core is still there. So she's like taking Han Solo and amplifying him in a much more severe way about 100 times in some way, which I think makes her that much more compelling of a character of what she's had to fight for and sacrifice. And I mean, seriously, go read some of the comics, because just some of the dialogue is really, really good. It's just really good.
They've done a good job with it. I'm not going to deny that.
Right. So with E.K. Johnston coming in and wanting to maybe give us a book like that in a similar vein of how she wrote Ahsoka.
Right.
Is really cool. And of course, a lot of people love the way that Padme's been portrayed in her series as well. So this one seems to have a lot of opportunity behind it of bringing a character that has been more secondary, maybe even tertiary, but in bringing up and giving us a more hyper focused view of her too, which I think is pretty well warranted at this point as well.
Yeah, I would say this too with E.K. Johnston. She's interesting. She's almost kind of fallen into this category of the character development writer, right? They bring her in for the Ahsoka, for the Padme. They tell these very young stories that are very meaningful, and certainly, you can see where all these initial blocks are for the characters that we get later on in life in the 20s, 30s, and beyond. So I think she's actually done a pretty good job with that. Right? You can love or hate the stories themselves. I don't think there's any denying that she's got chops to kind of put in and kind of flesh out these younger characters, especially the female characters as well. I mean, this is where she's been primarily focused. So I'm excited. I mean, I think this is a good thing for her, E.K. Johnston, controversy aside. And I think there's this is going to be good for a character like Kira as well.
All right, now one book you are probably going to be all over, Albert, is going to be this one. So you've been a pretty vocal fan of these series, as many of our listeners are, with these very short stories, very localized. DJO has been a fan of. He's a fan of mine too, but I'm a fan of his within the concept of these books, especially when he reads it on the audiobook, which is just anytime you have a chance of DJO to read a book,
It's always good.
He only has like one voice, but it is great though.
Yeah. And it's his real voice. I mean, there's no difference. So
I'm gonna let you kick this one. Like, what are your thoughts on, from a certain point of view, not necessarily a new reveal for us, but great looking cover and just a little more context. Maybe we'll just spend a minute to talk about it.
I mean, I love every one of these books, and I love every one of these stories, even the most insignificant stories that are in there when we're talking about, disembodied voices and controversial stuff like R5 being force sensitive, right? Or haven't been touched by the force or spoken,
all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, all that stuff is good stuff, and I really enjoy these books a lot. There's a lot of authors on it, 40 plus, I think, of course.
A lot of authors we're both familiar with, but many we're not, too.
Many that we're not. A lot of these is their first shot. Shout out to Adam Lance Garcia, who's a mutual on Twitter. He's got his first shot here. There was someone else, too. I'm not going to try to look through the names, but there are a few people. Kristen Baver's got her name on this one as well. So I like this. I mean, these stories are anything from 10 pages long, 5 pages long to 20. They can be 5-minute reads and they can be 10-minute reads, but there's some good stuff in here for the most part. But there is one thing that I do want to talk about, and I have not reached out to Adam Christopher on this, but I will. I'm going to follow up on this. Okay. So
this has been bothering him all day.
It's been bothering me all day long. Well, it's not bothering me, but I'm just like so excited. So when we had Adam Christopher on during the interview we did talking about Shadow of the Sith, and I don't remember if it was during the interview or before or after we had shut the camera up, but we have the video footage, so I'll pull it for proof. But we were kind of just chatting about, hey, with Return of the Jedi coming up, are you going to be doing a short story in there? And he said at the time he didn't know, nothing had been discussed, nothing planned. I said, tell you what, this one's free. Why don't you do a story, since you've already done a story with Pride in the Empire Strikes Back one? You've already done not Empire Strikes Back. What was it? Was it Empire?
I believe so.
He's done 2 stories now with Pride. I said, when it comes to Return of the Jedi, do a Pride story. And this is coming out because he was mentioned in Shadow of the Sith. And so then we started doing the math, and he was like, well, let me think about that. How old would he have been? I said, well, he would have been like a young cadet in the Empire at that point. He's like, man, that's a great idea. I mean, I'm kind of overselling exactly his expression, but he was like, yeah, that sounds like something I could do. So come out today, find out. I think I saw somebody had posted this earlier, but it was confirmed that Adam Christopher's, from a certain point of view, Return of the Jedi is about General Pride as a cadet. They use the word high, like he was high. I don't know what that means, but if you saw him or read more about him in Shadow of the Sith, you kind of get the sense that he's not the, he's probably not the poster boy for the Empire. How about that? But I don't know. I'm pretty excited. And I won't take credit, but I do want to ping him and say, hey, did I influence you in any way? If so, I won't say anything. You can have all the credit, but in my head, this is a victory lap for me. So I'll take the win on that one.
Yeah, I believe it's called Steadfast Soldier.
Steadfast Soldier, yeah. So this would be his 3rd time now writing General Pride. So good stuff. Looking forward to it.
Pretty exciting. Lauren, what's your take on these short stories through these like huge canon events of like Return of the Jedi, Empire Strikes Back, and so on?
Well, I do say I hope that Adam Christopher's story does not have Enric Pride wearing Ewok fur. That I would like that.
That one still hurts, huh?
Yeah, I'm not over that yet.
Yeah.
I'm still bitter. Yeah, I really like the short stories, and I like the different perspectives that we get from them, and it just like kind of enriches the stories that we already have as well. So I'm looking forward to going through this one too.
I was not a fan of the first one that came out, but until I appreciate a little bit more about what it was doing and what the benefit of stories like this were. It's not I'm usually a person I have to sit down and I'm not an avid reader. I enjoy reading, but I'm not an avid reader because I'm not very fast at it. And I have to kind of tunnel vision through it, right? I have to churn all the way through it. I didn't get a really great appreciation for the flexibility of these stories and the randomness of it in a very positive way of being able to say, these are just little moments in time. They can be fun. They can be serious. They can be just pure entertainment. They can be type of moments too, and like head scratchers. But
and we had a lot of those, all those moments in every one of these so far.
And that's been why they've been a bit polarizing in that way. I think not only just from are they canon or are they, what are we supposed to take from this? And some of them, some of the more controversial ones, if you will, using finger quotes and some of that. But until you kind of get an appreciation of like, just man, how liberating is that from a creative standpoint of being able to say, you know what, I've just always wondered. It's like when you sit around the table with your friends, you're like, I just wonder if there's just this one thing would have happened, or did this one thing happen in the background? And someone giving you the keys to the car and say, hey, why don't you go explore that for 20, 25 pages and just see what happens and come up with an idea or pitch us an idea and let us know what where you think it goes. And it's really cool to be able to get that and for that to feel like it is part of the mystique of Star Wars, and that all of these little moments that, like in our lives, if we were to tell you what would you do this week? You get all these really broad highlights. But you did a lot of really mundane things like run the dishwasher too, right? And what if there was a little silly story part of that running the dishwasher? I mean, sometimes it's silly to say that, but those are like little moments in life that every once in a while you tell your partner or you tell a family member and you're like, yeah, we had a little chuckle about that. So why can't I give Star Wars fans a little chuckle, based on these little silly stories?
Yeah, it's like a smaller scale sort of exploration, which is nice to have.
Right. So now I want a story about someone running a dishwasher in Star Wars.
Well, get on it.
I'm not volunteering. You don't want that.
Yeah. Well, the other thing, just to go back to the title, that's where that, from a certain point of view, comes in. There's a sense of like liberty. There's nothing really that restraining. You can kind of tell these stories that may not be, what we would expect in Star Wars and still get away with it, because is it true? Is it canon? Is it not? That's the beauty of all of these at the same time. I take everything literally, so this is all canon as far as I'm concerned. Dishwashers and all.
Okay, how about a couple of nonfiction books here? Well, they call them nonfiction Star Wars, but they're just reference type of books.
I call these holes in my wallet because I buy all of these things.
They tend to be pricey. So
they're very pricey, but they're so worth it though.
End of this year, we're going to get the Art of Jedi, Star Wars Jedi Survivor. Of course, this is the latest video game that comes out at the end of April with Cal Kestis and company. These art books have been and they continue to be absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just these are worth the money. You usually can find them for between $20 and $30 too. So they're not bank account breakers. They tend to come way after the material, which I think is the only disappointing part.
Yeah, but that's okay. I mean, right. Is this, is this Dark Horse that's doing this one then?
I believe, yes. I believe actually Dark Horse is doing this one, which was a little bit of a surprise.
Well, they did the first one. I was just going to pull up the very first one here. What I like about Dark Horse's behind the scenes art stuff.
They give you a really nice hardcover.
They give you a hardcover, but it's also taller than the ones that Disney Publishing and DK Books and all that do. They're a little bit taller, so you get more in these. I'm trying to think price wise how they line up.
Here's a comparison.
Yeah, so the Mando one versus that one. So it's probably a little bit wider too, but either way, I've been pretty happy with the Dark Horse stuff that they've been releasing for the art of. But these are, I mean, if you're a fan of really kind of understanding, here's where I love the artwork just in general, right? They have some of the most talented people working. This is like the Super Bowl for any artist to come out and do concept work or even just small sketches for Star Wars or Lucasfilm, Disney, whoever it is, right? But on top of that, what's always cool about these books as a Star Wars fan is everything in here is going to pop up at some point in some way. It could be a year from now, 10 years from now. Nothing ever goes to trash. Nothing's ever wasted. And so these art of books are really cool because they're comprehensive looks into the future of what we're going to get with other droid variations or characters and, stuff like that. So it's always fun to kind of go back and find these Easter eggs in these books.
Exactly. And it's getting to work with Albert the last few days, kind of behind the scenes in a more consistent fashion. This guy has always got one of these things pulled out, like every single time. The encyclopedia books in particular, art of anything that says, I think I've read that once somewhere. And then the hunt begins.
Yep.
And there's books on the tables and everything else. So it's really cool kind of seeing someone who it says that and then actually seeing that that's how they work and being able to go and find that enjoyment of saying, wow, we had it all along and we didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
That's really cool. I love the little stories that we get behind certain things too, or the progression of the concept art too. Like here's where we began, here's kind of where it started, here's some of the iterations we went to, and here's where we landed. And being able to see some of that, and I think to your point, some of those moments in between still don't get wasted. They get saved, they get put somewhere else eventually. And I just think that's so much fun to be able to have that.
Yeah. So I'm excited. I need to get this one for sure.
Now, before we came on air, Lauren had some thoughts around, no, not that one.
Well, she had thoughts on that one too, but
I'm looking for it. Gosh,
Was it the
encyclopedia.
Trying to
Oh.
remember. Oh, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm excited about this one.
I've got it here. Go ahead. There we
Okay.
go.
I didn't know if you wanted me to wait or go.
No,
Just
go.
ahead and
Just
go.
go.
Yeah, I will be
Okay.
fumbling for this for the next half hour.
Yeah, so that the High Republic character encyclopedia that they announced. I mean, what I thought of when I saw that
There we go.
was not only would it be a good collector's edition, like what you were talking about, Albert, but also like I know one thing that some people have felt about the High Republic is that getting into it with all of the characters is a little bit overwhelming, especially if you're coming into it late in the game. So I feel like this book could be a good resource for people to use too, in terms of like, okay, I want to get into High Republic. They're mentioning all of these characters right off the bat. I don't know who they are. I don't know what type of alien I should be picturing when I'm picturing this character, that all of those kinds of hangups that people have. And so I feel like this book would be really good for that as well. Just kind of like familiarizing yourself with like some of the key players in these stories.
Absolutely. And I like that we're getting phase 2 characters as part of this encyclopedia as well. So it's not just phase 1 in the kind of the current timeline, but it's relevant for everything we've been experiencing the year or so, in the last year or so. So I think being able to bring faces to names and some of that besides just the cover of the book, again, some of that additional context to Howard's point before, sometimes we get really cool, interesting ideas that are presented here and then they come back to us later on as well. So while there's never really story elements that get integrated here that we'd be able to glean from phase 3, sometimes there are very basic concepts and ideas that we would see reused and brought into that additional phase. And now Albert has one of his art of books here. This is the Art of the High Republic that just came out from Kristen Baver, right?
Yeah. Well, it came out last year, but so this was kind of, to me, this was the beginning, an extension of what we're seeing here. When I got this book, to your point, Lauren, like it was invaluable to be able to go back and say, oh, wow, I kind of pictured that character a little bit different. And you get to see all the iterations that you mentioned, the final product of it all. So what they're doing for this as well is very calculated, right? So I was looking it up just now on Amazon. So this book is releasing November 7th, 2023. So this year, it's going to come out just before phase 3 begins, right? So going back to what we talked about last night and the extended timeline that they're allowing phase 3 to kind of play out, having a book like this, which by the way, I think they had mentioned in the panel, over 250 characters are going to be in this thing. So I don't know how big this is going to be. They showed some pictures and it looks like it's a lot of the work from the art of book, but then there's a ton of stuff in there from the comics.
Yeah.
A lot of what's his name? Anandito's work that he's done. A lot of the stuff from like variant covers as well. I mean, it's beautiful stuff. But to your point, like it's going to be a great companion for somebody to have that says, man, I'm really enjoying the High Republic. Maybe they jump in during Acolyte. Maybe they come in at the beginning of phase 3. But I really wish we would have had something like this. I totally get why we didn't. But yeah, it becomes it's a companion, right? It's a companion to reading the books better than, the 4-hour shows that we did with limited art we had when we were throwing them up in our death by PowerPoints.
You stop that silly talk right there.
I mean, I was going to say too, it's kind of crazy to see the leveler right on the cover of this when back in phase 1, we were waiting to know what the leveler would look like. It felt like we were waiting for a long time. And now the leveler's just right there.
Yep.
Yeah, it's front and center on a lot of different things. But you get a very self-contained story in a nutshell for each character throughout this book. So you can go and learn. It's like going to Wikipedia or something, but with all of the wonderful artwork all right there on the page, beautifully presented to you. These books typically run about $20 or so. So they're pretty affordable as well. Great gifts, of course. But I like that you do get that. You get the really core story elements without having to get a huge investment at that time. And then you could say, which ones am I really interested in? And then find that reference to go back and actually find that material and say, okay, what do I want to do? If I'm going to go find, content about Avar Kriss, okay, here's kind of what you need to know about Avar Kriss. But then you can say, okay, go look to Light of the Jedi. Now go to the Cantina. I mean, not Cantina. Go to the High Republic comic books, and you'll find all the content that you really need. But do you own any of these books, Lauren? By the way,
I own a few kind of like reference books here and there. I don't purchase them like as soon as they come out, just because at the moment my bookshelf space is limited. So
it's looking a bit crowded there back there. Yeah,
it's a little crowded. So
and I'm sending you some new ones this week. So
yeah. So I have to make deliberate choices. But once I'm able to expand my bookshelf, space, then I probably will be more on top of these types of reference books because they are really cool to have and flip through and be able to reference.
Yeah, they really are. I agree. Okay, well, I think that's about all that we have for kind of publishing in general. We do have Marvel tomorrow, so we will get all the Marvel comics. I think that's interesting because we know they've been heavily teasing we're maybe going to get some Blade of Bardoza, a little bit more Porter Engle in the future. Lauren, that's been a pretty cool series, right?
Yeah, I was excited to hear that, and because that's definitely one of my favorite High Republic things that I've read. So I can't wait to have more of Porter Engle.
Yeah, they've been doing a great job with smaller, like little mini series type of things within the comics in general, and not necessarily the ones that make you go everywhere to go while you read the story, kind of like a Hidden Empire, which was good, by the way. But these isolated stories like the Yoda comics, we've had this with Markion Row with the Eye of the Storm short series. These are really, I like that they're doing these things because they do give you very compartmentalized stories and give you a little bit of backstory, whet that appetite just a little bit more, and give you content that you want without a huge investment of saying, okay, I got to stick with this for, 10 issues or 25 issues or a whole comic run for multiple years. I can kind of get these really short form comics and the short form material, and they're very affordable in that way. So I'm excited what Marvel's got in store for us tomorrow.
Yeah. I forgot to mention too. So the character encyclopedia, the primary writer is Amy Rickow.
Yeah, right. Yep.
Yeah. So I don't know if you guys know this, but she used to be part of the Cantina cast years ago. So we got that going for us. So cool to see former people still doing it. Maybe we'll get there someday. Maybe not.
This is why we brought Lauren on board.
Yeah, Lauren will be the first to be there. We'll still be doing this, and she'll be writing books and hosting stages and all that stuff at some point.
And we'll be right there to support her.
Yeah, we'll be right there to support you and talk about you behind your back after the show's over.
Oh, so, lovely.
No, I'm kidding. We're not bitter like that, right? All right, so tonight we've got day 3 celebration coverage coming up. We'll get into some of the live celebration interviews. There was a couple panels today that happened. We're going to talk some Ian McDiarmid, the villains of the sequel trilogy. No new major revelations or anything like that, just more anecdotal stories. We got another good quote from Ian McDiarmid, which I'll talk about here. I think was very appropriate and funny given today is Easter. And then tomorrow we'll kind of wrap up everything with our single show. Yeah. Tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Central, we kind of doing a day 4 recap, kind of a show recap. I kind of want to take and maybe even do just kind of like a, hey, what was the give me your top 3 things of all celebration for you personally. And so we'll go round table between the 3 of us here and kind of talk about that as well. So,
So if you want to come back for our day 3 overview, again, like I said, a bit of a light overview of everything because it was a bit of a lighter day. No major reveals. We'll be back at 7 p.m. tonight. That's Central Time here on today's Sunday, right? Yeah, Sunday. And then we'll come back tomorrow. So cantinacast.com/YouTube. Again, we do have a Q&A show that's coming up. Thank you for the people who have been signing up for Patreon and for putting questions in. cantinacast.com/question to get your questions in for the Q&A show. If you want to guarantee your question will be answered on air, cantinacast.com/Patreon. Sign up there and then go to cantinacast.com question. Make sure you tell me what your Patreon name is so I can validate that. Let us know that, and we'll get put on the list, and we will put you up towards the top of that list with all the other Patreon members, and make sure that you have your moment to ask your question and make sure you get answered.
All right. Lauren, anything before we get out of here from you?
I think we covered everything for me. I'm looking forward to talking about those interviews later, though.
Yeah. Jones, any last thoughts, comments, words of wisdom?
Wow, no, you don't want those for me.
Okay.
No, we'll see everyone here in a few hours.
Yep. 3 hours to be exact. So see you just in a few here.
You're still listening? Wow. That's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property, and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.